Not long ago I had the pleasure of watching Transformers once and it felt oddly familiar. It must be because it has the same plot as Red Rising, the sci-fi novel that many claim was the most original and fascinating thing you've ever come across, but honestly, in my humble opinion, from my perspective, it wasn't that great. First, let me clarify that I really enjoyed Transformers 1. I'm not a huge fan of the franchise, I didn't watch the series as a kid, and I couldn't care less about the saga by the ultra-patriotic Michael Bay. But this new installment entertained me a lot, despite the obvious cliches and tropes used ad nauseum in fiction. Obviously, spoilers for both stories ahead. So how are Transformers 1 and Red Rising alike? Let's see. Starting with the obvious themes, both are sci-fi stories where a planet has suffered a great decline and an entire community lives underground working as miners, believing that their labor will save their community, their people. Both protagonists, Orion Pax in Transformers and Darrow in Red Rising, are poor miners from the lowest possible class, with whom we, the working class, will immediately identify. You know, because their jobs are deadly, poorly paid, but vital to society. Pretty much like being a teacher. They don't carry lunch in a nice Tupperware, but in a recycled container that used to hold margarine or ice cream. Second, both oppressed societies work underground under terrible conditions due to false promises from the elite of their world. In Transformers is Sentiel and his entourage of Autobots with the cock thing. And in Red Rising is the elitist wealthy Golds. I would say that in both cases the average reader would already suspect something fishy is going on, so it's not much of a surprise when our heroes find out that their leaders are actually very nice people. Darrow discovers that Mars has been habitable and colonized by upper classes for years, and that the Reds are being deceived to keep them oppressed. And Orion learns the truth about Sentiel's betrayal and how he's deprived their society of Energon, the mind material, to maintain control. We also have the classic hero transformation from a rag poor soul to a promising revolutionary leader. Darrow undergoes a physical transformation to infiltrate the Gold society class. He literally dyes his hair blonde, takes off his glasses, lets down his ponytail and becomes the prettiest girl in school, adopting a new identity and physical abilities in the process. And Orion received that transformation cock, becoming Optimus Prime and taking on a tall, broad-chested form with a voice like a radio announcer. And all of this, of course, is part of a plan to free the downtrodden from the clutches of the oppressors. One of the most overused tropes in fiction lately is the "you were my best friend, but now I can't stand you" storyline. Darrow's close friend Cassius eventually becomes his rival and swears vengeance against him. D16, the sidekick and BFF of the old Orion, aka Optimus Prime, ends up becoming Megatron, turning against Optimus Prime and separating as mortal enemies. I don't know how executive conversations or writer rooms or creative team meetings go, but they must go something like this. Remember that show Lazy Town? Let's do a dark and gritty reboot because quality comedy is hard to make. Excellent! It'll be like a prequel where we see how a poor and wimpy kid named Slim grows up to be Sportacus, and he has an adventure with his most loyal friend, Robbie Royce. Yes, and at some point their friendship breaks and Robbie becomes Robbie Rotten and will be the villain of the story, breaking the audience's heart and leaving them shocked by the unpredictability of such a plot twist. Exactly, just like Professor X and Magneto in Smallville with Clark and Lex Luthor, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Peter Parker and Harry Osborn, and even that Peter Pan prequel where Peter and Captain Hook are best friends. We're so brilliant. Where do we get our ideas from? At this point, it's pretty easy to predict the outcomes of movies and books when they overuse the same tropes. Remember Lightyear? Yeah, of course not, because you didn't watch it, but parts of the plot were very similar to the Lego movie too. Alright, spoilers. In Lightyear, Buzz' terrible enemy, Zork, ends up being Buzz himself, who traveled through time and became a villain, so Buzz ends up fighting himself to try to avoid becoming that future version. In the Lego 2 movie, there's Emmett, who befriends a super cool guy named Rex Dangervest. He later discovers that Rex is actually the villain of the story, and even worse, turns out to be himself, a future version of Emmett who traveled through time and became a villain. So Emmett ends up fighting himself to try to avoid becoming that future version. Fighting an evil future version of oneself appears in other stories too. I won't mention which Netflix series because I don't want to spoil it to you. Well, it's not wonder that all adventure stories start to look the same if they just follow the herd. It's the classic hero's journey archetype. Clichés and tropes are all well and good, but execution matters. Execution is everything.